Tasha Sterling had dismissed 43 men in Atlanta this year. Tonight, Marcus the tech entrepreneur would be number 44. My crypto portfolio alone has tripled since. Marcus gestured excitedly across the upscale rooftop bar. This has been educational, Tasha interrupted, gathering her Hermes purse. But I have an early morning. As she walked toward the elevator, leaving Marcus confused mid-sentence, one thought echoed in her mind. Is this what passes for stimulating conversation in this city? What Marcus didn't know was that Tasha Sterling had never met a man in Atlanta who was enough for her. But that was about to change in ways she never expected. In her Buckhead penthouse, 29-year-old Senior VP Tasha Sterling poured wine that cost more than most monthly salaries. The Sterling family didn't settle for less than excellence. Her surgeon parents had made that clear since childhood. Her phone buzzed. "How was your date tonight, sweetheart?" Remember, the Johnsons' son is a cardiologist. Tasha ignored her mother's text. In a city full of successful men, why couldn't she find one who met her standards? The answer to that question would soon terrify her. A week later, Tasha found herself defending those standards to her best friend, Kennedy Wright, over dinner at one of Midtown's most exclusive restaurants. Kennedy, a federal judge with natural grace and sharp intelligence, had been watching Tasha's dating life with growing concern. "So let me get this straight," Kennedy said, leaning forward across the white tablecloth. "You've dismissed Marcus because he talked too much about money, Derek because he was too predictable, and Cameron because he was too aggressive. Tasha, these are good men. What exactly are you looking for?" "Someone who challenges me intellectually," Tasha replied, twirling her wine glass. "Someone with ambition that matches mine." "Is that too much to ask?" Kennedy's expression grew serious. "You're looking for a unicorn. These men are doctors, lawyers, executives. They're successful, attractive, available. What exactly are you holding out for? Jesus Christ himself." The words hung in the air between them. Tasha laughed, but there was an edge to it that Kennedy recognized immediately. "Maybe I am," Tasha said. "Maybe that's what I deserve. Or maybe," Kennedy replied carefully, "you're so afraid of letting someone get close that you find fault with everyone before they can find fault with you." The observation hit Tasha like a physical blow. It was exactly what Julian, her most recent ex-boyfriend, had said when he ended their 4-month relationship. That dating her was like interviewing for a job he'd never get. That she made him feel inadequate. But admitting that would mean admitting she was afraid. And Tasha Sterling didn't do fear. That night, Tasha did what she always did when faced with a problem. She approached it like a business challenge. Sitting at her sleek home office desk, she opened her laptop and created what looked like a corporate presentation titled Partnership Criteria. If she applied the same standards to relationships that she did to business, she reasoned she should get better results. Her list was thorough. Advanced degree from a top-tier institution, 7-figure income potential, real estate ownership, international travel experience, ability to discuss art, politics, and literature, physical fitness and grooming standards, clear ambition and emotional maturity. Over the next 6 months, Tasha embarked on what could only be described as a systematic dating campaign. She upgraded her dating app memberships, hired an exclusive matchmaking service, and networked at every professional and cultural event in the city. She dated Derek, a neurosurgeon whose flawless technique extended to everything in his life, including his complete lack of passion. She dined with Cameron, an investment banker whose ego filled the room before he did. She walked the Beltline with Rashad, a professional athlete who was sweet but preferred Netflix to the books on her shelf. She attended gallery openings with Antonio, whose romantic ideals about art didn't align with her practical views on financial security. Each man checked some boxes. None checked them all. With each failed connection, Tasha became more convinced that the problem wasn't her standards. It was Atlanta's men who simply weren't high enough quality. What she didn't realize was that with each date, she was becoming more clinical, more detached, more unreachable. The very standards, meant to help her find love, were building walls that kept everyone out. The Children's Hospital Charity Gala was the kind of event where Atlanta's elite gathered to see and be seen while supporting a worthy cause. Tasha, stunning in a black evening gown, moved through the opulent ballroom with the confidence of someone who belonged in these circles. Her parents, working the room nearby, had someone they wanted her to meet. "Darling," her mother said, approaching with a tall, handsome man in tow. "Have you met Dr. Alexander Wright? He just moved here from Boston." Dr. Alexander Wright was everything Tasha had been searching for. Harvard medical and Harvard business degrees, 3 medical practices, and a medical device company, a villa in Tuscany, where he curated his collection of contemporary African and African-American art, fluent in Italian, recently returned from volunteering with Doctors Without Borders in Haiti. As they talked, Tasha mentally checked off every item on her list. Alexander was brilliant, discussing medical innovations with the same ease he spoke about Renaissance architecture. He was successful, mentioning his practices and business ventures without arrogance. He was cultured, describing his art collection with genuine passion. He was philanthropic, sharing stories from his volunteer work that showed real compassion. He was perfect. And that's when Tasha realized the terrifying truth. She felt absolutely nothing. No butterflies, no excitement, no spark. Just a vast, empty space where her heart should be racing. Excusing herself to the ladies' room, Tasha stared at her reflection in the ornate mirror, her hands gripping the marble counter. The woman looking back at her was successful, beautiful, accomplished, and completely disconnected from her own emotions. With shaking hands, she called her mother. "Mama, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What's wrong, sweetheart? I met the perfect man tonight, everything I said I wanted, and I felt empty, completely empty. What's wrong with me?" There was a long pause before her mother's gentle voice came through the phone. "Baby, maybe you've been so busy building walls to protect your heart, you forgot how to let someone climb them." The words shattered something inside Tasha. For the first time, she saw herself clearly, a woman so afraid of being hurt that she'd never allowed anyone close enough to hurt her. But she'd also never allowed anyone close enough to love her. Dawn was breaking over Atlanta as Tasha walked alone through Piedmont Park. She'd traded her designer gown for jeans and a sweater, clothes that felt foreign on her body, but somehow more honest than anything she'd worn in years. For the first time in her adult life, Tasha Sterling was facing the truth about herself. She'd spent years building the perfect life, the perfect career, the perfect image. Somewhere along the way, she'd convinced herself she deserved the perfect man too. But perfection wasn't real. Connection was. When Kennedy called, Tasha found herself having the most honest conversation of their friendship. "I met someone perfect last night," she told her best friend, "and I realized that was the problem." "What do you mean?" "I've been so afraid of not being enough for someone that I convinced myself no one was enough for me. Every man I dismissed, every relationship I sabotaged. It was just fear wearing a designer dress." The conversation with Kennedy was followed by an even more difficult phone call to Julian, the man she'd pushed away months earlier with her impossible standards. "You were right," she told him. "Dating me was like interviewing for a job. I was so scared of getting hurt that I never let you see the real me. I'm sorry." His gracious response reminded her why he'd been worth dating in the first place, and why her fear had cost her something real. That morning, Tasha deleted her partnership criteria document and made a decision that would change everything. She was going to learn how to be vulnerable, how to lead with her heart instead of her resume. 6 months later, Tasha found herself in a place she never would have considered before, a cozy neighborhood coffee shop in East Atlanta. No marble countertops or designer fixtures, just local art on mismatched walls and the genuine warmth of community. Across from her sat Miles Anderson, a 31-year-old high school English teacher whose easy smile and kind eyes had captured her attention in a way that no perfectly polished executive ever had. His hands showed guitar calluses from the folk music he played on weekends, and his conversation was filled with stories about the Highlander folk school and the power of music in social justice movements. A few months ago, Tasha would have dismissed him immediately. He didn't make enough money, didn't have the right degrees, didn't fit the profile she'd created of who she should be with. But that was before she learned the difference between someone who looked good on paper and someone who made her heart race. "I spent so long looking for someone perfect," she found herself telling him as they prepared to leave. "I forgot to look for someone perfect for me." "And now?" Miles asked, helping her with her coat in a simple gesture that moved her more than any grand romantic display ever had. "Now I realize profiles are for dating apps, not for hearts." As they walked out together, hands almost touching, Tasha reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She'd spent years looking for a man who would complete her, when what she really needed was to become complete herself first. Someone who saw her ambition and wasn't intimidated. Someone who challenged her thoughts and touched her heart. Someone who made her want to be vulnerable instead of invincible. Walking down the tree-lined streets of East Atlanta with Miles, Tasha Sterling finally understood something that had eluded her for 29 years. Love isn't about finding someone who checks all your boxes. It's about finding someone who makes you want to throw the boxes away. And in a city full of millions of people, Tasha had finally found the one man in Atlanta who was enough for her. Not because he was perfect, but because he was perfectly imperfect in all the ways that made her heart come alive.